There's a plant somewhere in your yard right now that's sulking. Maybe the leaves are yellowing along the edges. Maybe it just sits there week after week, refusing to grow. Or maybe it rotted out at the base after all that spring rain and now it's mush. You bought it healthy. You planted it the way you were supposed to, and it's quietly giving up on you anyway. Most of the time, that plant isn't the problem, and neither are you. The problem is underground. If your soil is heavy clay, you are not working with the same dirt those plant tags were written for. Clay can grow beautiful things. What it refuses to do is grow the wrong things. And it punishes a few very common mistakes harder than any other soil on the planet. Here's the part that changes everything. Clay isn't one problem, it's two. The plant that fixes a wet, sticky low spot is almost never the same plant that survives the part of your yard that bakes into a brick by the middle of July. Once you can tell those two situations apart, the whole thing gets a lot simpler. And a lot cheaper. Let's clear up what clay actually is, because the reputation is worse than the truth. Clay is made of extremely fine particles packed tightly together. That tight packing is exactly why it frustrates people. Water moves through it slowly, so after a heavy rain, it stays soggy for days, while the roots sit there with no air. Then summer arrives, the surface dries, and those same fine particles shrink and harden until the ground feels like pavement. Wet and airless one month, cracked and concrete the next. But here's what nobody tells the homeowner standing in the garden center feeling guilty. Those tightly packed particles also hold on to nutrients and moisture better than sandy soil ever could. Clay is often some of the richest ground you can have. It's not poor soil. It's just slow, heavy soil that suffocates anything you treat like light, fluffy potting mix. So the two faces of clay look like this. You've got the low spot, the place near the downspout or the back corner where water pools and the dirt stays cold and gummy. And you've got the high open spot in full sun that turns to brick and develops those deep cracks by August. Same yard, two completely different jobs. Most of the plants coming up are tough enough to handle clay. The trick is knowing which kind of clay each one wants. Because putting a wet-loving plant in your baking strip or a drought lover in your soggy corner is how you keep losing money. And before we get to a single plant, there are two mistakes that ruin more clay plantings than any bad plant choice ever could. The first one feels generous, which is what makes it so common. You dig your planting hole in the clay, and because you've heard clay is bad, you fill that hole back in with a big load of fluffy compost or bagged garden soil. You're trying to give the roots a soft, rich start. What you've actually built is a bathtub. The amended soil in the hole drains fast and holds a lot of water. The packed clay walls all around it barely drain at all. So water pours into your nice soft hole, hits the clay like it hit the side of a bucket, and just sits there around the roots with nowhere to go. Extension specialists call it a perched water table, and the end result is root rot in the one spot you tried hardest to baby. The roots can also start circling inside that soft pocket instead of pushing out into the surrounding ground. If you want to improve clay, the better move is to amend the whole bed, a wide area, blending compost into the native clay gradually so there's no sharp wall between fluffy and firm. For a single plant, you're often better off loosening a wide, shallow area and planting into mostly native soil, so the roots learn to live in the dirt they actually have. The second mistake is timing, and it's easy to make on a free Saturday after the rain. Never dig or work clay while it's wet. Wet clay smears. When you slice into it with a shovel, you glaze the sides of the hole into a slick, sealed surface that roots and water struggle to cross. and you compact the structure even more. Wait until the soil is dry enough that a handful crumbles instead of forming a sticky ball. In heavy clay, a lot of folks reach for a pick instead of a shovel because it breaks the ground up and leaves the edges rough instead of smeared. Get those two things right, choose plants that already like heavy ground, and clay stops being your enemy. Now let's get into the 7. Number 1, false indigo. Picture the worst sunny clay spot you've got. The open patch near the driveway, the front bed that bakes hard by July, the place where soft annuals stall and thirsty perennials sulk. That is where false indigo, or baptisia, starts to make sense. Baptisia is a deep-rooted, native perennial with pea-like flowers in late spring and clean, shrub-like foliage that holds its shape after the flowers are gone. Most types land somewhere around 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, depending on the cultivar, so this is not a tiny front-edge plant. It belongs in the middle or back of a sunny border where you want something with real presence. The reason it fits clay is underground. Once established, baptisia sends down a strong root system that helps it handle heavy soil and dry spells far better than many softer perennials. It is especially useful in sunny clay that dries hard in summer, not in a low spot that stays soggy for days. Give it full sun, decent drainage, and room, and it becomes one of those plants you do not have to keep replacing. Here is the honest part. Baptisia is slow to establish. The first year, it may look like it is thinking about whether it wants to be there. Do not keep moving it. It has a deep taproot and resents transplanting once it settles in. Plant it where it can stay. It is generally considered deer-resistant, but not deer-proof, and it can be mildly toxic if eaten, so use common sense around pets, livestock, or children who chew plants. If your clay is sunny, heavy, and dry by midsummer, baptisia is a much better bet than another plant that secretly wanted loose garden loam. That covers the spot that bakes. The next plant is for the opposite problem. Number 2, Siberian iris. If you've ever bought a tall, bearded iris, watched it rot in your heavy soil, and decided irises just aren't for you, I want to change your mind with a different one entirely. Siberian iris, Iris siberica, is the iris that actually likes clay. Garden writers and extension guides routinely call it the go-to iris for heavy soils. Instead of the fat, surface-sitting rhizomes of a bearded iris, which sulk and rot in wet ground, Siberian iris grows from a tougher, fibrous root system and forms a neat, grassy clump of upright foliage that looks good from spring all the way to fall, even when it isn't blooming. It runs about 2 to 4 feet tall and a couple feet wide, and it's hardy roughly zones 3 through 8. In late spring, it sends up elegant flowers in blue, purple, white, wine, and yellow, held on slender stems above the foliage. It's happiest in moist, fertile soil, the kind of consistently damp clay that drowns other plants, and it's right at home along a low border, near a downspout, or anywhere the ground stays evenly moist. Once it's well established, it'll shrug off some dry spells too. In hotter southern regions, give it a little protection from blazing afternoon sun and keep it watered, and it performs beautifully. 2 things to flag. First, place it where you'll see it. It's a tidy, well-behaved clump, perfect for the front or middle of a border. It self-sows lightly, but it is not aggressive and not invasive. Second, and this one's important if you have animals or little kids, the rhizomes and roots of Siberian iris are toxic to dogs, cats, and horses if eaten. And the sap can irritate skin, so wear gloves when you're dividing it. It's worth knowing before you plant, not after. Number 3, swamp milkweed. Now let's deal with the spot that stays genuinely wet. Every clay yard seems to have one. The low corner where water collects and just sits. The patch by the gutter that's still squishy 3 days after it rains. You've probably killed a few things trying to make that spot behave. Stop fighting it and plant something that was built for it. Swamp milkweed, Asclepias incarnata, is one of the very few ornamental perennials that genuinely thrives in wet, mucky clay. Don't let the word swamp scare you off, though, because it's a clean, upright, well-mannered plant, not a weed. It grows 3 to 5 feet tall, forms a clump about 2 to 3 feet wide, and through mid to late summer, it's topped with clusters of soft, pink, fragrant flowers. It's hardy across most of the country, roughly zones 3 through 8. It wants full sun for the best flowering and average to wet soil, and it tolerates that heavy, periodically saturated clay that defeats most perennials. Here's a pleasant surprise from the research. Even though it loves damp ground, it's reasonably drought-tolerant once it's settled in because it sends down a deep root system. So it forgives you on the dry weeks, too. The reason a lot of people seek this one out is the wildlife. Swamp milkweed is a host plant for monarch butterflies, meaning the caterpillars actually feed on it, and the flowers pull in bees, butterflies, and even hummingbirds through the second half of summer. If you've wanted to do something for monarchs but had nowhere dry to plant the usual milkweed, your wet spot just became an asset. 2 caveats. Like all milkweeds, it contains compounds that are toxic if eaten, by people and pets alike. And the milky sap can irritate skin, so handle it with gloves and keep that in mind around grazing animals or curious kids. And it self-seeds modestly. If you'd rather not have volunteers, just snip the seed pods off in fall before they split open. Deer generally leave it alone. So far, we've matched the dry spot, the moist spot, and the soggy spot. Let's talk about making the front of the bed actually look finished. Number 4, prairie dropseed. Yes, this is another grass. Stick with me because it does a completely different job than the first one, and it solves a problem a lot of clay gardens have: an edge that never looks pulled together. A front border or a walkway edge looks unfinished when there's nothing low and consistent holding the line. That's where prairie dropseed earns its place. Where little blue stem stands up tall and architectural, prairie dropseed, Sporobolus heterolepis, does the opposite. It forms a soft, fine-textured fountain of thread-thin leaves that arch out into a neat mound, only about 1.5 feet to 2 feet high, maybe 3 feet when it's in flower. It's one of the most refined-looking grasses you can grow, and it's hardy roughly zones 3 through 9. It prefers well-drained ground, but per multiple botanical gardens and extension sources, it tolerates a wide range of soils, including heavy clay. In late summer, it throws up airy flower stems with a fragrance people genuinely love and describe as something like buttered popcorn or coriander. Fall turns the whole mound golden orange before it fades to a soft bronze that holds up through winter without flattening under snow. For a tidy gardener, this one has a real advantage. It is usually not a rampant self-seeder in ordinary garden conditions, so it is easier to manage than many grasses. That makes it ideal for lining a path, edging a bed, or anchoring the front of a foundation planting in clean, repeated mounds. Space them about 2 feet apart for that rolling, continuous look. It's deer-resistant and not fussy once it's going. The one thing you have to know up front is patience. Prairie dropseed is slow to establish. It may look like it's barely doing anything the first year or two while it builds roots. Water it through that establishment period, resist the urge to dig it up and replace it, and by year 3, it becomes one of the best-looking, lowest-demand plants in the yard. If you're finding the pairing useful, here's a small ask before we keep going. If your garden center trips keep turning into expensive experiments, subscribe. This channel is here to make the yard make more sense before another plant goes in the ground. And do me a favor in the comments because it genuinely helps other people in your situation. Tell me your state and tell me what your clay does after rain. Does it stay sticky for days or does it dry into a hard crust? Those 2 yards need different plants, and you'll see other folks in your zone comparing notes. Now, the next three are the heavy hitters, starting with one for the back of a sunny clay border. Number 5, New York ironweed. New York ironweed is not a polite little bedding plant. It is the plant for the homeowner who has room, sun, heavy soil, and a spot that needs height instead of another low mound. New York ironweed, Vernonia noveboracensis, is a tall, bold native that erupts in clusters of intense reddish-purple flowers from late July well into September, right when your yard and the local pollinators need it most. The color is striking, and the plant pulls in swarms of butterflies, including monarchs and big swallowtails, plus native bees, and then songbirds come for the seeds afterward. It's hardy roughly zones 5 through 9. For our purposes, the key fact is what's underground. Ironweed has powerful roots that, in the words of one design guide, can cut right through clay. It naturally grows in damp meadows and along stream banks, so it handles moist and even periodically wet clay with ease. And it tolerates drought once established, too. It's about as adaptable as a tough native gets. Now, the honest part. This is a big plant, commonly 4 to as much as 7 or 8 feet tall, so it belongs at the back of a border or in an informal, naturalistic spot, not crammed up front. 2 practical tips solve almost every complaint people have about it. First, plant it in full sun. In too much shade, it stretches and flops, but in full sun, those stems stay stiff and upright on their own, with no staking. Second, it's a well-behaved clump that does not run by underground roots, but it will self-sow from seed. If you don't want seedlings popping up, just cut the spent flower heads off in fall before the seed drops. Deer and rabbits tend to pass it by. The next plant gives you something ironweed doesn't: presence in the dead of winter. Number 6, switchgrass. Most perennials disappear in winter. They die back, you cut them down, and the bed is just bare mulch and cold dirt for months. If you want something that keeps the yard from looking empty all winter, and happens to be one of the most forgiving clay plants there is, this is it. Switchgrass, Panicum virgatum, is a native prairie grass that forms strong, vertical, columnar clumps. The foliage stands 3 to 4 feet, and when the airy flower plumes rise in mid to late summer, it can reach 5 to 7 feet, depending on the variety, in shades of blue-green or olive that often pick up burgundy and gold tones in fall. Then it does the thing that earns it a spot in this list. It stands tall and tan all winter, catching frost and snow and moving in the wind, giving the bed real structure when everything else is gone. It's hardy roughly zones 3 through 9. Here's why it might be the most useful plant in this whole video. Switchgrass tolerates clay better than most ornamental grasses, and many selections handle a useful range of conditions. Once established, it can take summer dryness, and it can also handle seasonal wetness or brief wet periods better than many perennials. That does not mean it belongs in permanent standing water, and it still needs full sun to stay upright. Full sun keeps it strong and upright. Shade makes it flop. A few cultivars worth knowing by name because they're better behaved in a home garden than the wild form. Northwind is prized for staying tightly vertical and not splaying open. Shenandoah tops out around 4 feet with red-tinted summer foliage and burgundy fall color. Either is a great choice for a narrow, columnar accent. One caveat for the tidy gardener. Switchgrass spreads slowly by short underground stems and can self-sow modestly in bare ground. It's not aggressive, and seedlings are easy to pull or move, but in a formal bed you may want to thin volunteers now and then. Plant the clumps 2 to 3 feet apart, cut the old growth to the ground in late winter before new growth starts, and that's essentially the entire maintenance routine. That's 6 plants for 6 different clay situations. The last one comes with a warning, so only plant it if you've got the space and the conditions. Number 7, Buttonbush. Some of you have a spot that's not just moist. It's wet, genuinely wet. The low end of the yard that holds water for long stretches. A pond edge, a ditch. The place water actually stands after a storm. Most shrubs drown there. This one was made for it. But it comes with two real conditions, so let's be clear-eyed. Buttonbush, Cephalanthus occidentalis, is a native shrub that lives in wet ground that defeats almost everything else, including soil that floods and even shallow standing water. In summer, it covers itself in unusual, perfectly round white flower balls, like little pincushion spheres, that are intensely fragrant and absolutely loaded with bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. After bloom, it forms round seed buttons that birds and waterfowl feed on through winter. It tolerates clay readily and shrugs off heat and compacted soil. Now the two conditions. First, room. Buttonbush is big. In a typical yard, it grows 6 to 12 feet tall and roughly 6 to 8 feet wide. And in the right conditions, it can stretch even larger, more like a small leaning tree. That's not a shrub you tuck beside the porch. If your space is tighter, look for a compact name variety like Sugar Shack or Magical Moonlight, which stay smaller, in the 5 to 8 foot range. It's hardy roughly zones 5 through 9, and it needs full sun to part sun because flowering is poor in shade. It also is not drought tolerant, so it is strictly for that wet spot, not a dry one. Second, treat it as a plant that should not be eaten. Buttonbush is reported as toxic to livestock, and it is not a shrub I would place where pets, children, or grazing animals are likely to chew leaves or stems. For most homeowners with a wet back corner, that's the entire point of, this is not a concern. But if you've got animals that browse or young children who explore, place it thoughtfully, or choose a different plant for that spot. Used the right way, in genuinely wet clay with room to grow, Buttonbush can turn a soggy clay corner into a useful wildlife planting instead of a place where ordinary shrubs keep failing. That's a real transformation, and there isn't a bag of soil amendment in the world that would have gotten you there. The plant did it by liking what you already had. Before you head out to buy any of these, here's the one habit that'll save you the most money going forward, and it takes 5 seconds at the plant tag or the website description. Read the soil line and sort what it says into 3 buckets. If the description says the plant wants moist soil, tolerates wet soil, or mentions rain gardens and pond edges, that plant will likely be happy in your damp or soggy clay. If it says it tolerates a wide range of soils or tolerates clay, it's flexible, and you mostly need to match it to sun and how wet your spot gets. But if you see needs sharp drainage, well-drained soil, lean soil, or gritty soil, treat that as a polite warning written just for you. Those words mean the plant will likely rot in heavy clay unless you've got a high, fast-draining raised spot. In a low clay yard, put it back. That is really the whole shift. You do not have to turn clay into perfect loam before anything good can grow. You do have to learn what kind of clay problem you have. Walk your yard after the next good rain. Find the spot that always gives you trouble. Is it sticky and slow to drain, or does it dry into a hard crust? Once you know that, the plant choice gets much easier. Give the right plant water while it establishes. Keep it in the kind of clay it actually tolerates, and that spot can become much easier to manage. Not effortless, just no longer a place where you keep buying the wrong plant twice.